Today we have a great opportunity to learn and share about a critical issue for all of us, and that is food recovery and food rescue. We want to thank you for taking your time to share and learn with us. My name is Greg Nordahl. I'm a long-term board member with Second Harvest. I think I've been on the board for just over 10 years, and I'm a past chair. And I'm so proud and pleased to be associated with Second Harvest and everything it's done, and everything it's going to continue to accomplish in the future as we expand and grow as an organization, as the needs within our country don't seem to go away. So it's important that Second Harvest step up and do what we can to alleviate a very serious problem. I'm very proud to be part of the Second Harvest organization, even in a peripheral role. We've been around for 34 years, and in that 34 years, we've rescued and diverted from landfill about 140 million pounds of food over the history of this organization. Yeah, it's incredible. So today we're going to review issues related to food recovery and why it's important to incorporate it into everyday business practices.
First and foremost, I have to say thank you to Greg Nordahl, who has been an amazing board member at Second Harvest, and if it was not for him, this project might not have gotten off the ground. So thank you. So as we all know, there is more than enough food in the world to feed everybody. And yet we have so much food going into landfill that we are having a detrimental effect on our environment. So this common sense solution from Second Harvest has been happening for about 33 years. And we have a fleet of trucks that pick up surplus food across the supply chain and deliver it to about 253 agencies in the city of Toronto, which is fantastic. But what we found was there was all this other food that wasn't being accessed because it wasn't efficient. It didn't make sense to send a truck to go pick up a couple of trays of casserole. And we are very grateful to the Walmart Foundation, who invested in Second Harvest and said, well, why don't we buy you a truck and see if we can't get the food from Walmart? And so they did that. And you know what happened? It was not worth it. There was not enough food at Walmart to use that truck. So they let us keep the truck so we could pick up from farms, which was fantastic. And we sat down and said, okay, there has to be a better way. FoodRescue.ca was born. And that was for, in Toronto, to ensure those small yields of food could still get accessed by the people that need them. So that's at your local student nutrition program, that's at a food bank, that's at a meal program. This is good food that we should all be eating. There is so much of it. So we are incredibly grateful to the Walmart Foundation and the Ministry of Environment and Conservation and Parks thought it was such a good idea, they said, well, let's do this across Ontario and see how it works. So this is our official launch of this project. And what we found is this is a great local tool. So although Second Harvest created it, it really is for everyone's community to use it. And we are grateful today because we have our partners from Niagara, from Kingston, and from Sudbury here, who are all implementing this tool.
Food is about bringing people together, and food rescue is about bringing food communities together. And we've constructed a panel to share some ideas and perspectives related to food rescue. And with no further ado, I'd like to then introduce Christine Beaumay, Second Harvest Vice President of Programs and Partnerships, to introduce the panel and take us forward. Thanks.
Thanks, Greg. That was great. I wanted to start by asking Rob, longtime donor to Second Harvest, why did you sign on to FoodRescue.ca, and why is it important to your associates at store level?
Yeah, one of the things, Longo's is a family-run business. It's still run by the Longo family. It started in 1956. Tommy Longo was the founder. And we all wear these legacy bands that say, do the right thing even when no one's looking. And Tommy always said, when the sun shines, it should shine for everyone. So it's always been part of his philosophy to give back to the communities that support us. So to donate food makes perfect sense.
So I know Longo's has actually donated 3,000 pounds, and they've only started participating in the program in July. And so, that just demonstrates the impact that it's having. And surprisingly, 5 and 2 kitchens recovered 3,000 pounds of food. And so right now, I think that what we're seeing from retailers is they ease into donations, and they start with what's easy and what they know will work and is safe. And so they start with bakery. So Seema, tell me a little bit about how you use the food that's donated by your partners and where you get it from if you know.
Okay, so I'm just going to go back a bit. So every week in the kitchen, we used to bake. We wanted to bake something for the meals we were sending out. So we used to rescue or buy cheap bananas, overripe bananas from no frills. So we used to pay money and buy that and make banana cake, bread. And we also used to use rescue bread, stale bread, and make bread pudding. And when the food rescue program started, we stopped baking, like completely. We don't bake anymore because we're rescuing a lot of baked goods from Tori's Bake Shop on Queen Street, on Front Street, and also from JJ Bean in Scarborough. And they give us loads of muffins and banana bread, amazing organic cupcakes. I mean, you should see the look on the faces of the kids who get those. FJC, Letitia's here, she knows what we give them. It's just amazing just to see how those kids react to the food we send them now, the cupcakes. We could just send them banana bread, but now we send them cupcakes. We send them just such beautiful looking desserts, which we cannot even afford to buy. I mean, forget about us buying. Just imagine the little kids in the programs and even the food banks or the shelter. They get amazing stuff because that's what we're rescuing from the program now, from these different programs.
That's right. And it's, and it's as we grow and expand, I think that the variety of food that we get also grows and expands, because I think in Second Harvest's history, is there a history of expanding the type of food donation once they become a donor? Laura, if you could speak a little bit to that.
Sure. So at Second Harvest, we focus on perishable, healthy food, and that is produce, dairy, and protein, and that's about 72% of the food we recover. And that is simply because that's the hardest food to access if you're low income. And I was low income, and I used to do food rescue about 20 years ago at my child's school. And one of the reasons I love this platform is because it saves a whole lot of school nutrition coordinators from knocking a bunch of doors. They just have to go to a website. I know that wasn't your question, but.
That's okay. We can't stop, Lori. We've tried. So Andrew's with the Retail Council, and maybe you can round out. There are a number of retail. Is there a growing demand by retailers to do something about food waste?
Yes, for sure. And I think most of the retail community approach it from a business or waste reduction. If you think about it, food that's not sold is actually a cost to them. And when I look at food waste or food loss and waste in a retail system, I always think of sort of pre-point of sale and then post-point of sale. And of course, there's reduction efforts pre-point of sale, better ordering, better shipments to match the shipments with the sales forecast. If the food's not sold at a regular price, it's sold at a promotional price, maybe at a reduced price. Those are all food loss and waste efforts, kind of pre-point of sale. If we get to a point where it's now post-point of sale and the food hasn't gone off to a consumer's home or to a customer's home, we are very limited in what we can do with that unsold food now. It's sort of three disposition efforts or routes where donation, anaerobic digestion, compost, or dare we say waste, or to a landfill. So I think what they would like to do is maximize that donation piece. And they're partnering with food banks or food agencies or whatnot. But I think where this FoodRescue.ca or this tool comes into play is the retail community will tend to keep produce for as long as possible to almost what I deem as peak ripeness. So once it's at peak ripeness, there's very little time left before it can be consumed. And so therefore, we want to get it into those who need it quickly. So food banks is kind of like not an option at that time. We need to connect with local food agencies right away at the end of the day, be it a food retailer or maybe a food service company, where we can connect, come over, maybe not in the Walmart truck or whatnot, but we can come over and grab that and then save the 3,000 pounds and whatnot, which is on top of already the millions of pounds that's already being donated.
That's right. And David, you're with the Toronto District School Board. Tell me how Food Rescue is going to play an important role in what you do and where you see this leading to.
For sure. So with Toronto District School Board, but also the Catholic Board, the French boards in Toronto, and there's some community sites. Across the whole of Toronto, there are over 800 student nutrition programs operate every day. So those are breakfast programs, morning meals, so a snack in the early part of the day, a few lunchtime meals as well, but it's over 800. It's huge. So we're feeding 200,000 kids a day in Toronto. The money, the funds that we get for this come from the province, from the city, which is very welcome. We also get support from other organizations, the Grocery Foundation, which is very much welcome. But nevertheless, there's always, coordinators at a local level, as Laurie is saying, are often scrambling to make ends meet and to make up the difference between the funds they have and the food that they would like to provide. We ask providers, coordinators to provide 3 food groups every day. A dairy, fresh produce, and a grain. And doing that on a limited budget can be a real challenge. And part of our challenge is we have many, many sites. It's not one central point where you can pick up a whole load of food and take it to one point. There are 800 points all over the city. So the whole concept of linking people on a local basis with places where they can get small amounts of food efficiently and use it effectively in their program is huge for us. So it addresses the budget side of things, it addresses the desire to feed the best possible food to the maximum number of kids. And also, actually another point from an educational point of view, learning about environmental impacts. It's tracking how much food that's been diverted from landfills, what the impact has been on the environment in all kinds of ways, is a wonderful educational opportunity as well. So in many ways, it is really a great opportunity for student nutrition programs, for schools, and for students.
Great. And so I think the one thing that we heard as we were launching the program was that everybody believes that there's a risk associated with recovering food and redistributing it to people that would use it. So I don't know, Rob, if you could speak a little bit of the kind of preparation and training that you had to do at Longo's to get your staff to participate in the program, either at Second Harvest or through FoodRescue.ca. But I know FoodRescue.ca takes a little bit more hand-holding from that end.
Yeah, for sure. We didn't see a risk in donating the fresh food. The risk really was, did we have the resources? As you can imagine, the team members at store are very busy, and do we need to? They don't necessarily appreciate another task added to their daily duties, right? But we were fortunate enough to have a gentleman named Aiden who works in our Leaside store who was really passionate about giving back. So we wanted to harness that energy, and we said, you know what, Aiden, we've got this pilot from Second Harvest. Would you like to lead it? And he was all for it. So that really helped us really drive this pilot forward, to have Aiden, because he believed in it. And he really wanted to make this happen. And that's why I think it's successful today, because of that.
Seema, just if you could tell me, so we hear about the risks and liabilities on the retailer side. Is there really a risk? Like, I know, when you take the food, do you think that the food you're getting is acceptable for the people that you serve? And if you could ask, our donors what it is that you need the most of and how to get that message to them.
Okay, to answer your first question, for example, we've been rescuing a lot of sandwiches and wraps from JJ Bean, and we were getting them out the way they came in, and so the feedback we received was they're soggy. They get a little soggy because they have a base, maybe of hummus or some kind of a base. So the chef said, well, we'll have to unwrap them, cut them, put them in the oven. So it's a little extra work, but we make sure then they kind of crisp up a bit, they dry up, but they're absolutely delicious, right? So it's initially he said, no, I cannot send these out, but we figured out a way to be able to use them. So now they have to be unwrapped, cut, and then baked, and then sent out again. So there's no risk in a sense. Like we taste what we get, because just to make sure they're good. And so the end user is going to be sure they're getting something good. But we always look for feedback anyway, because sometimes it's a day old, sometimes it's 2 days old, sometimes they freeze it and then it's sent to us. I mean, we pick it up after that, right? So it could be in these different stages. For sure. But we always check the food before it goes out, and it's good food.
One of the things that we're seeing is it's not just social service agencies. We're reaching, and with David and TDSB, we're reaching a wider group of people. And what's the net impact of that?
There's this word that we use called waste. And it really is about language, because the food that we're collecting, as everybody on this panel can attest to, is not waste. It becomes waste when someone throws it in the garbage. This is amazing food. And so really it should be accessible to everybody, regardless of income. We should all figure out a way to access this food. The prepared food is what we just picked up from Daniel at Daniel, is fantastic because a number of the places that we work with don't have appropriate kitchen facilities, so they can't actually prepare, and yet they have 100 people coming for dinner. So we know that there's more acceptance. I think we're trying to get more acceptance, and we have to stop saying this is a poor thing, this is a waste thing, because it's not. It's surplus, excess, unsold food that is good for all of us, and we know that because we all ate it this morning and loved it, did we not?
Right, and that has the net benefit of, we always talk about it, destigmatizing the way that we look at food and providing donations to food. And I think that eliminating that stigma allows more people to donate and allows more people to accept the food, and I think that that's positive overall. So in terms of David, just can you tell us a little bit about how many schools and what you're hearing from the schools at that level, and again, what you see the impacts for on having more nutritious, healthy food available at that level?
Nutritious, healthy food, yeah.
I know, I can't say the word, I'm not enough coffee.
It's a tongue twister for sure. So at the moment we have, I think, about 40 schools signed up, and we have more coming in and getting interested each day as they hear about it. We're running as a pilot right now because of lessons to be learned and how to make it work effectively. So we don't want to go too wide until we've figured out, some of those details, but nevertheless, we're still having more coming in saying, we've heard, we're interested. The donations the food rescues are starting to come through, which are very much appreciated. So having a variety of foods that maybe students wouldn't have had otherwise is a really interesting opportunity as well to introduce students to new kinds of foods that they may otherwise simply not experience. It's quite astonishing to me when I go into some schools, there are kids who have never ate fresh fruit, for example. It just isn't something that's served at home. Maybe their parents were brought up without it, and so on. Brought up on TV meals, that kind of thing. And kids who say, "Oh, I don't eat fresh fruit. We don't eat that kind of food." What do you eat? Oh, fries and that kind of stuff. And suddenly they get the chance to try something which is new for them, and they realize they like it. And that's a really important step along the way to having a more healthy lifestyle, long-term, lifelong, and the impacts in terms of long-term health benefits are huge. The other impact which we notice with student nutrition programs is the impact on school behavior. Kids are calm if they've eaten properly, they haven't eaten too much sugar. That's a really big impact. And learning, the research has shown that where kids have food in the mornings, then the impact on their academic success is noticeable. So there's all kinds of benefits that come through in that kind of way. So we're looking at really, local benefits, but also long-term, huge social impacts potentially on simply getting food, which, as Laura says, is available, it's there, it's good, getting it to the right people at the right time. And the tool that we have here now is a really important step towards us being able to do that on a local basis, which is where a lot of these things will be solved, I think.
Yeah.
One thing I did want to add, David, your point about it was an interesting insight about, those kids have never had fruit. Like, that's the basis of our business, is fruit and vegetables, right? So that is a huge impact and a huge insight that imagine just teaching these kids and generations to eat better, because it's not expensive to eat well.
Yeah.
If you just help them prepare it and working with all the different programs.
I'm going to ask Rob, if you could help us, you are now our advocate, and if you could talk to other food donors, what message would you deliver to them on why it's worthwhile to participate?
Well, I think I would tell them that it's not as hard as they may think it is. I think I would tell them, believe it or not, you've probably got advocates in your place of business. You may not have talked to them, but there are a lot of people who really care about this, and they'll do the heavy lifting for you. So again, I bring up Aiden again. So he was really the one who took this and ran with it. So everybody's busy, but he ran with it. So, and then the last thing is really, it's the right thing to do. Like, why would you not do this?
And Andrew, if you could tell us what you would tell your retailers, why FoodRescue as opposed to
The other avenues.
the other
Exactly,
avenues?
exactly.
And are there, because I know we talk a lot about the barriers to participating, but what are some of the things that help reduce those barriers?
Exactly, and that's exactly what I would tell the retail members, whether they're a national food retailer or a regional one, is think of the benefits. Like I said, when they now at that post point of sale place and their preferred disposition route is now food donation, this FoodRescue really fulfills a need there. Sometimes there's capacity issues, sometimes there's geographic issues and whatnot. So this provides just another avenue for them to get more unsold food to those in need before it becomes, to Laurie's point, either compost or waste.
David, how do we tell parents that this is available, and how do we get more participation?
Parents are aware. There have been a few questions around, is it good food? Because it's, is it stuff that's about to go into landfill, so my kids shouldn't be eating it? So I think actually having a process in place where, we know that both sides are carefully screened in terms of the donors, but also the recipients, to make sure, the food is kept in good state. There's cold chains are respected if they're in place, that kind of thing. We know if appropriate freezers and fridges and so on are in place. So it gives us the assurance to be able to tell people, yes, it is good food and it's healthy food, but it's also safe. And there's protocols in place to ensure that's the case.
We are a kitchen, right? So whatever we get, we are able to, we have a chef, so he's able to check whatever we get. But I think to a lot of other agencies who don't have a kitchen facility, again, I would say it's safe, because from my experience, we've had no issue with any of the food we've received from the program. And so go ahead and sign up and, get the food, because you're just going to be passing it on to someone else who can use it. It's just amazing when you actually get the food and pass it on, because it's not food you can make yourself. 100%. I couldn't make those cupcakes. I couldn't make what we're getting, we're rescuing. So it's fantastic food. So don't hesitate to sign on and get going.
And Laurie, how can we promote this to our agencies?
We all have a role to play at this. So it is the panels, it is the media that's here. We know it's working. So when it's in individual local communities, we find that it spreads pretty quickly as soon as someone does it. So I am very confident that this is going to snowball. And I don't know if anybody heard the latest UN report, the IPCC report that talked about climate change. And it basically said we have about 12 years to get our act together. And that seems so huge. Like, what do you do? And this is one small step we can all do. So I would just say, take the first step. Tell your friends, tell the world, and we can all actually make a significant change when we do it together.